Hello and welcome back to the What Problem Are You Solving podcast, where we believe that finding out what problem you are solving turns into what pays. We're two lean startup coaches that have a passion for quickly delivering value before you spend too much. Again, my name is John Ruark, and I'm a lean startup coach in the DC metro area. And as always, I have my friend and compatriot, Ty Smith.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Sound a little raspy tonight.
You got to make sure you wash your hands nowadays. If you don't have any intention, but if you just touch your face, man, just destroy. You end up with the scratchy throat and oh my God.
It's still winter.
This, man.
It's still winter. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you have your radio voice on tonight, which is great. So welcome.
Is this thing on? Okay. Just making sure.
Okay. So we're going to walk through the next step in the innovation readiness levels. Back in the previous episodes, we've talked about how you can determine what your process is of how you move through innovation, or how mature you are in your innovation throughout the ecosystem of your environment, of your organization. And we started off with these 9 levels, right? And with 1 being the most immature, 9 being the most mature. Well, innovation readiness level 1 was your first pass of your business model canvas. Last episode, we walked through all 9 blocks that you have to consider when you're designing your business model around your solution. Who are your customers and what your solution is. Now, we're going to dig into, once you figure that out, what do you do understand the context around your business model? So, Ty, talk to us about the innovation readiness level step 2, completing your ecosystem analysis or pedal diagram.
So I'm glad you asked about that, John. So every organization, every business, every organism in the world is inside of the context of a ecosystem. So what do we mean by that? An ecology is all of those pieces that influence how your organism will grow, how it will sustain itself, and in some cases, how it'll be subsumed and maybe die out. And so as you're looking at your business as a organism, you have to understand all of the impacts that are potentially associated with that. And so when we think about it, we think of this in terms of 4 key areas: key market forces, which are literally the forces that are shaping your customers' ability to do work. Your key trends, those are the trends that are social trends, that are tech trends, that are regulatory trends. There are industry forces, things that the industries are putting pressure on your business and the things that they have to offer. And finally, your macroeconomic forces, which are large system forces that are not local, but are global forces that you need to consider. And so all of those things are important to understand where your business lies inside the system. Watch out for the man.
Right. And so let's go walk through some of those, because it's really valuable to break down what do we mean by those 4 steps of the macro or the economic forces surrounding your business model. The first one that I want to start with is your market forces. Mm-hmm. And usually this is associated with the customer, because they are the market that is driving the sale or the usage of your business model, right? So this really has to do with a lot of customer behavior and what else is going on in the market, right? One thing that's really interesting to think about, let's just say your business model is in cable TV, right? And you've been providing the service for either a fiber or a coaxial input. And now the market is shifting away from being landlocked to their TV system, right? Just like the way the telephone went, the market forces drove away from having to call a place where you had to be tethered to the wall to talk, to where you could have telephony anywhere. Well, if you are now a cable TV entertainment provider, why can't you provide entertainment everywhere? So what we call that in economics is making sure that your customers' needs and demands are met, and that the switching cost may be either too high if you're trying to protect your business, or it's not too low so that they can easily jump over. I myself am actually doing a free trial right now as we speak of an online cable TV service that's much cheaper. We've done the math, and it's going to save us a bunch of money on what we're already paying for today. And so the switching costs are extremely low, right? Switching costs meaning, can I have a substitute and I can jump over that really quick? Am I not locked into a long contract, or is it difficult for me to switch? Which, when I was doing this free trial, it was like 2 clicks and I was up and running for this free trial. It cost me nothing to switch over to that. And so the costs were the term we like to use, frictionless, right? Because friction is a good metaphor for what the customer has to go through when they engage with your service or when they're trying to leave your service. So when you think about that in the context of market forces, right? Switching costs, if they're frictionless, so basically they can go to your competitor, you might want to think about that. These are all these outside of your business model things that you need to consider, so that you can either plan for and design mediations around that, or just understand and accept that risk and know that that is a risk to your business model, and make sure that you are balancing that out accordingly with any other parts of your business model. Right.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So the thing I think I hear you saying is that your business model, in terms of your customer, not only has to understand the needs and demands, but also has to be responsive. And if you can't meet the responsive, it is not dynamic and flexible enough to meet the needs, you're in trouble. That's what I hear you saying.
Right. And in the last episode, when you're designing your business model, you're focusing on that customer. But now you need to focus on basically protecting that customer and making sure their needs and demands are met, so that way they don't leave.
Yeah.
That could be just as simple as that the market is going away from what you're offering, right? Someone has to stop selling horses and start selling cars, right?
That's interesting you say that, because your business model should also help you understand what customers you need to fire as well.
Tell me more about that, Ty.
So if you think in terms of the market, your market is now shifting. You use the idea of the horses, the Henry Ford. If I asked the customers what they wanted, they'd ask me for a better buggy whip. The business model, the market forces, as he foresaw, it wasn't about the needs and demands of a faster horse. It was the needs and demands of where they wanted to do, what they were trying to make. Oh, we got to get to grandma's house on Sunday because the fried chicken is starting to get cold, or the pies are out on the ledge and somebody's going to eat them up before I get there. And so they needed to be able to figure out which customers they could fire to actually, because of the market pressures, to be able to provide a new value and get somebody to pay for it.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now I want you to tell me a little bit more about the next economic forces.
So I think we were going to talk about macroeconomic trends. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So think about it this way. If you think about, we talked about last time about the business model canvas, and that the business model canvas is since 9 boxes, and the last 2 boxes at the bottom that undergird everything that you do are cost and revenue. And those are macroeconomic. And so we say that if it costs you more to produce the value that you're producing, why in the hell would you do it? Seriously, that's stupid.
You're going to lose money fast.
Yeah, you're losing money. To produce stuff, you're going to lose money. Now, that's not to say that some businesses don't plan on losing money, Amazon, that they don't understand that there is a long-term curve to how they're going to create revenue. But they also understood that they were in the process of creating value, because the trends, the economic forces, the global conditions, Amazon or Alibaba, it was really trying to set global market conditions, that they were shaping the market so that where the capital was going to come from through all their commodities that they're sourcing. Because, while Amazon was actually starting to build itself, for instance, it was a bookstore, but they were building the economic infrastructure around data that allowed them to access the data so they could build more stuff. And I don't know if you know this, but they actually make more money on their Amazon Web Services than they do almost anything else. It is one of their primary economic drivers inside their business model. And so thinking about the markets where you're going to go and grab your monies, because somebody, unless you are, except unless you're Mark Cuban, who says, never borrow money, always figure out how to do it, or the Michael Dells of the world, where you start in your, you find such a brand new and fresh market that you start in your dormitory room and build out this infrastructure to provide these computers. You need to be able to go where the capital is. You need to understand how do you set up become part of an economic infrastructure at a macro level, as well as tapping into the commodities that will help drive your resource allocation as well as your revenue. So again, if it costs you more than it does to provide and capture the value, create, because correct me if I'm wrong, John, business model is how an organization creates, captures, and delivers value, right? Those three.
Absolutely.
If you're not involved in the space where you're now taking and collecting those accessing those commodities to create revenue, I don't know what business you're in. And so macroeconomic forces are all about understanding the global market conditions, taking advantage of the capital markets where you go out and find the capital, understanding and creating your own economic infrastructure that is not your computer infrastructure. I don't say that. It's the economic infrastructure, and then accessing the commodities and other resources that allow you to create that value. And so that is what one of the second of the four forces that we want to talk about tonight, macroeconomic forces.
Okay. So thank you. And I want you to now shift gears and talk about some of the industry forces. And I'd love to hear more about the kind of how this blue ocean strategy ties into that. So first, if you could explain blue ocean strategy in a nutshell, and then how it impacts all of the industry forces.
Oh, absolutely. So one of the things that good businesses do is to understand where they are in the industry in which they find themselves. Okay, you have your market forces, you have your macroeconomic forces, but in the back end, how do you shape and manage your industry? And so out there, I would just want you all to raise your hand. Ready? 1, 2, 3. How many of you have stayed in an Airbnb? Go. There you go. Okay. How many of you ever gone to a Cirque du Soleil? 1, 2, 3. Ready? Go. What was different about either an Airbnb or Cirque du Soleil? Let's start with Cirque du Soleil. We're going to work backwards. Cirque du Soleil is what we call a blue ocean company. What did they do that was so fantastic? They are neither a circus nor the theater. They are somewhere in between. They have shaped an industry out of an old industry. As a matter of fact, as you all know, after 147 years, Barnum and Bailey's no longer exists because they were competing in what we would call a red ocean. They were competing against the same 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 circuses, large or small circuses, trying to have better tigers or better aerialists or better bands, or the guy who stands with the top hat and yells when there's the conductor of the circus. Cirque du Soleil pulled out of that. They created a new space. And so we had talked about in macroeconomic forces about commodities. Sometimes if you're trying to shape an entirely new industry, you have to think about how to decommoditize what you do to create new space. So Blue Ocean strategy literally says, in the world of commoditized environments, what do you need to do to separate yourself so you can find space that's non-competitive? And so when we think about the industry forces, you have to think about a lot of different things. For instance, you have to think about your value chain, your supply and value chain. You have to think about who your stakeholders are, the people who will help you execute your business. You have to think about the competitors as well as the insurgents. So who are the incumbents in your space and who are the insurgents in the space? And then, as John said, he talked about earlier about the cable company. What are the substitute products that people can use? As a matter of fact, he has gone beyond cable. He has leaped into a new space beyond that and said, well, somebody else said there is a blue ocean space, because we now have, and you'll be able to maybe guess who that company is. We now have an entire infrastructure with lots of penetration into the market. We have lots of capability, and we have lots of eyeballs that we can now tap in and get those. And now we're going to create an entirely different way to have viewing, not Netflix, viewing that we are going to say, we will give you this free because we're trying to create a competitive enough switching costs, market force, that our industry, we're going to create an entirely different industry that will allow us to accelerate choices and create entirely different industries, managing those forces in a way that enables us, that we are creating and capturing value, that we're going to capture value for those customers. And so if you understand those pieces, particularly around your competition in terms of entrants and incumbents, as well as the switched products, substitute products that create additional value, you can actually do something pretty powerful in your business. And so, John, we've talked about 3 of the 4 opportunities: markets, economic forces, industry forces. But what's really interesting in terms of what is on the horizon, and we'll get to maybe some horizon work in another podcast. There are trends that good businesses can start to think about because they notice beyond their fingertips. What are those trends?
That's right. So the last part that you have to think about in all of your ecosystem analysis is, what are the key trends that are out there? And this is a little bit of sometimes crystal ball gazing, which can be wrong, but if you don't think about those things, then you won't know which blue oceans to go after or where the red oceans are. The least of which are things like technology trends. Are people shifting away to new technologies, right? Whether it's be mobile upgrades and new sensors, new devices, or whether it be just new platforms altogether, right? So going away from using the cable TV provider, are they jumping into an online only platform? That is a technology trend where people are watching more online rather than they are in front of a big screen, right in front of the wall.
Right.
I know at a recent Netflix earnings call, when they do their quarterly call, it shocked me to hear that they consider their largest competitor, wait for it, not to be Amazon Prime, not
or HBO,
Hulu, not to be HBO, but esports online streaming, right? Watching people play competitive video games is Netflix's biggest competitor. They outright said this because they see that as a technology trend, which also ties into the next trend, which is societal and cultural trends. If you don't consider, which is even socioeconomic, if you don't consider where the new demographics are going, the key demographic that got you to where you are today may or may not be that's your choice, but may or may not be the sustaining demographic that you need to target for the future, because you have to shift towards new trends, right? If you are targeting, those who stay at home and aren't that mobile, then maybe a fixed, stable infrastructure may be your best business model. But if you're trying to target a demographic who's mobile always, mobile first, and rarely sits down in one place to watch something, and is watching streams, there's so many streams they can't decide where to choose from, and they follow their celebrities on their streams, then this is going to impact your business model. Something you have to consider. The societal trends. There's also regulatory trends. A big one in the online space, right, was net neutrality a couple of years ago. That could have big impacts if it had stayed or when it was reversed, right? Because it can create some monopolistic tendencies that could help protect your business model, or it could create a problem for your business model if laws change,
right?
If rules change, and then, well, what do you do if something changes? You got to go fix it. You have to adapt to that because no business model survives first contact with policy and regulation. Coin that one. I like that. And then the last thing is look at spending patterns in your market as well. When you consider the socioeconomic trends, where are your customers getting their income from? How are they spending their income? I think it's interesting to see the shift back toward unlimited data plans that for many years, a while back, for mobile devices, they were we're going to cap these and all that, but people were just paying more and more and more. And but all of the mobile carriers were offering, we have cheaper services, but people didn't want that. They were willing to pay more for higher data tiers or unlimited pricing. And so they all shifted back. Now, every major carrier has an unlimited data plan in some way, shape, or form. So the socioeconomic trend said that although we have a broad spectrum of customers, we have to consider that despite their demographics, they may be wanting to spend more, and you have to consider those trends as you think about your business model. It's in itself, right? So that's socioeconomic trends, the cultural trends, regulatory laws, and just the technology themselves. All crystal balls you need to consider as you lay out where am I going to design my business model next. So Ty, what are your thoughts on that? All right, I think your camera froze up a little bit, so hopefully we'll get you back here in a little bit. But so in summary, we have these four major components that you need to think about: your market forces, your macroeconomic forces, your industry forces, and then finally your key trends. These four pieces need to be around your business model to understand what your business model does, how it's protected, and how you are adapting to these external factors that are pushing on the tops and sides of your business model. I think we lost Ty, so I think it's a great time to stop. We'll see you next week for Innovation Readiness Level number 3. My name is John. That was Ty, and we'll see you at the next What Pays podcast. Thank you very much for watching.